I always thought betrayal would come like a thunderclap loud, chaotic, impossible to miss. But when my little sister stood up during our mother's birthday dinner, smiled sweetly, and said, "I'm pregnant, and the father is Elliot," the room didn't erupt, it froze. Elliot. My husband. Forks stopped mid-air, my stepmother gasped. My father looked like he'd been shot. And me? I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. Because while Claire thought she had one thought this stunt would make me crumble, divorce Elliot, and leave half my fortune on the table, she didn't know I had one thing she hadn't planned for. A secret. A weapon. And that night, as I calmly reached into my purse and pulled out a sealed envelope, I wasn't just revealing documents. I was detonating the moment that would change everything. I hadn't planned to make a grand entrance that night. I didn't need to. The dinner was for my stepmother Evelyn's 60th birthday, and for once, I thought we might just get through an evening without drama. The venue was a private room at Bellamy's, one of those upscale restaurants with white tablecloths, gold-rimmed china, and waiters who whispered. Elliot was next to me, quiet as usual when around my family. He sipped his wine and scrolled through his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. I knew that he hated these events but tolerated them for my sake. And then Claire walked in. Late. Wearing a red dress 2 sizes too tight, hair curled like she was auditioning for something. She looked at Menno greeting and immediately went to hug Evelyn. Everyone clapped politely. She made her rounds with exaggerated affection. "Uncle Ted, you look great. Oh my God, is this the lamb rack? I've missed this place." Not a single word to me. Not even a glance. I should have sensed it then. After the main course, Evelyn stood to thank everyone for coming. She was mid-toast, glass raised, when Claire interrupted with a bright, chirpy, "Actually, I have something to say." I blinked. Everyone turned to her, including Elliot. She stood, dramatically placing a hand on her flat stomach. "I'm pregnant." Gasps. Someone dropped a fork. She let it linger before continuing. "And I think it's time the family knew. The father is Elliot." The air left the room. No one said a word. My brain didn't scream or spiral, it went cold. I turned to Elliot. He looked down. Coward. "Claire?" She beamed, like a starlet announcing an engagement. I could almost hear her inner monologue. Now she'll leave him. Now he'll get half. Now I'll finally live like she does. Evelyn clutched her chest like someone had fired a gun. My father went pale. My cousin mouthed, "What the hell?" to no one in particular. But I just reached for my napkin, dabbed the corners of my mouth, and said, "Interesting." Claire laughed nervously. "I mean, it wasn't planned, but we're happy, and we hope you'll support us." Elliot finally spoke, voice barely audible. "It just happened." Of course it did. They thought I'd fall apart right there at the table. They thought I'd cry, or scream, or run out. They didn't realize I had already seen this coming. They didn't realize I had prepared. Because when you've built everything yourself, every dollar, every asset, every inch of your life, you don't just hope people are honest. You make sure you're protected when they aren't. For a moment, no one moved. Not a clink of glass, not a breath. Evelyn finally broke the silence. "Claire, what did you just say?" Her voice trembled, halfway between shock and scandal. My stepmother had always adored Claire, but even she hadn't seen this coming. Claire repeated it, softer this time, like she was easing it into the air. "The baby is Elliot's. I'm 3 months along." 3 months. Right around the time Elliot said he was working late and crashing at a colleague's place during that software conference in Houston. How convenient. Elliot looked like he wanted to disappear into the tablecloth. He wouldn't even look at me. I just leaned back, folded my hands in my lap, and said, "You know what's interesting, Claire? That you thought this would work." She blinked, startled. "Work? I'm not. This isn't a plan, Laurent, this is love. It just happened." Right, love. Between my husband and my unemployed 23-year-old sister who still didn't know how to pay a credit card bill, my father, God bless him, finally found his voice. "You had an affair with your sister's husband? In this family?" Claire crossed her arms and rolled her eyes. "I didn't plan for it to happen. But maybe if Lauren wasn't always so busy, Elliot wouldn't have felt so alone." A few gasps. Evelyn choked on her wine. Elliot still said nothing, a coward to the very end. I stared directly at Claire. My voice came out low, level. You think you've won something here, don't you? Claire lifted her chin smug. I don't want anything from you, Lauren. Elliot's with me now. And there's going to be a baby, a real family. That's when I smiled. The kind of smile that makes people nervous. Because Claire didn't realize that while she was busy seducing my husband, I was running risk reports and asset protections. She didn't know about the clause in the prenuptial agreement that specifically covered infidelity. She didn't know that Elliot's financial rights were already reduced to nothing the moment he stepped out of our marriage. And she definitely didn't know I had more than one reason for letting her say all this in front of the entire family. Claire, I said slowly, I'm not going to fight you for Elliot. You can have him. But what you won't get is a penny of what I've built. Her face twitched. Just for a second. And I knew. She had been counting on it. Evelyn, still stunned, finally asked, but what does this mean for the family? I looked around the table. All eyes were on me now. It means the family is about to find out what happens when you try to steal from someone who's 10 steps ahead. Because this wasn't just betrayal. It was an attempted heist. And I was about to shut it down. This wasn't Claire's first betrayal. It was just the first time she'd done it in heels and lip gloss, right in front of the whole family. As I sat there, staring at the two people who had detonated a bomb in the middle of Evelyn's birthday dinner, my mind didn't spin with confusion. It connected the dots. One by one, clearly. Claire had always been entitled. She was born when I was already 10. Same father, different mothers. Her childhood was all protection and indulgence. Mine, expectation. My dad had high standards for med grades, scholarships, internships. Meanwhile, Claire barely made it through high school, but still got a car on her 17th birthday. A white convertible she immediately crashed 2 weeks later. My dad died when I was 22. Claire was 12. After that, our relationship shifted. Evelyn inherited the house. I moved to Austin, built my career from scratch every paycheck, every bonus, every promotion. Meanwhile, Claire floated from cosmetology school to bartending to just taking a break to figure things out. And yet, she always had questions about my life. How much is rent in Austin? Wait, they pay you that much? Is Elliot's car in your name or his? Always framed as casual curiosity. But now I saw it clearly. Those questions weren't innocent. They were reconnaissance. A year ago, I had taken Claire shopping as a favor to Mom. She'd maxed out her card again. I paid for her groceries, told her to get help. She joked, well, someday I'll just marry rich and not worry about all this. I didn't laugh. I should have known then. Claire never wanted to build something. She wanted to inherit it, shortcut her way to the life I bled for. And Elliot? He was never a builder either. He was charming, good-looking, worked in sales, made decent money, but he didn't dream. Not the way I did. In the beginning, I mistook his calmness for stability. Now I saw it for what it was, passivity. He was a man who could be led. And Claire? She knew exactly where she wanted him to go. That's why they planned this. The dinner, the reveal, the timing. Claire didn't want to tell me, and Privitesh wanted an audience. She wanted to watch me break. But I didn't. Because I had one advantage she'd never have. I knew exactly who she was. She might be carrying Elliot's child. But the only thing she'd ever deliver was destruction for herself, for him, and for anyone foolish enough to think she could love without agenda. And if she thought getting pregnant was going to unlock the gates to my fortune, she had underestimated the wrong sister. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was heartbroken, but because I was focused. By 7 a.m., I had made 2 calls. First, to my assistant at the firm, cancel my morning meetings, family emergency. Second, to Janice Bloom, my personal attorney. Janice picked up on the second ring. Lauren? Pull up my prenup, I said. I want to go over every word. Silence. Then a sharp inhale. What happened? Claire happened. And Elliot. Janice didn't need more. She'd always had a sixth sense about Elliot. Said his handshake was too soft for a man that confident. By 10 a.m., I was in her office, sipping espresso from a porcelain cup while she spread the documents across her glass desk. You were smart, she said. You opted for complete separation of assets, not partial. That means Elliot doesn't get a cent unless you voluntarily give it. I nodded. I won't. Janice's eyes twinkled. And if he tries to contest, he's going to have a very expensive uphill battle. You had legal counsel. He had his own representation, and both signatures were notarized. But what about the baby? I asked. Could Claire try to sue for anything on behalf of the child? Janice shook her head. The baby is Elliot's responsibility, not yours. You're not legally bound to support your husband's child with another woman, even if that woman is your sister. I exhaled for what felt like the first time since the dinner. And for the first time in 24 hours, I smiled. They thought they had me cornered. They thought I'd collapse, panic, maybe even offer a settlement just to avoid public humiliation. But I had legal armor, and now I had momentum. And I wasn't done. I went home, opened my personal vault, and pulled out an old folder marked Claire, Confidential. Yes, I had a file on my sister. Because years ago, when she accidentally got pregnant by her 41-year-old mentor and tried to extort him for a car and rent money, I knew something wasn't right. I dug back then, just for my own peace of mind. Screenshots. Venmo requests labeled just in case you don't want your wife to find out. Emails forwarded anonymously. Text messages Claire forgot to delete from the family iPad. I never used them. Until now. This time, I printed them out. Labeled each page. Numbered the exhibits. Claire liked drama? Then I would give her a stage she'd never forget. And the curtain would rise at lunch next Saturday when I'd invite her and Elliot for a peaceful discussion. Because if they wanted to play games with my life, they were about to learn what happens when I played back by my rules. I chose the location carefully. A quiet corner table at Bramwell Co., the same upscale bistro Elliot used to beg me to reserve for his birthday when we still played pretend. Saturday noon. Perfect daylight. No shadows to hide in. They arrived together, of course. Claire wore ivory again, pretending to be innocent, and Elliot was in the same navy sport coat I bought him last Christmas. The one he'd said made him look CEO ready. Now he just looked nervous. Lauren, Claire greeted me too brightly. I'm really glad you reached out. Elliot added quickly. We didn't want things to get messy. I smiled. Oh, I completely agree. That's why I thought we could talk calmly. Get everything out in the open like adults. They relaxed just a little. Exactly what I wanted. The waiter came. I ordered sparkling water. They ordered brunch, like it was a date. Maybe for them it was. For me, it was war. Once our drinks arrived, I leaned forward. So, I said softly, let's talk about what you want. Elliot cleared his throat. We've been thinking. Once the divorce is finalized, we could come to a fair arrangement. Fair? I echoed. Claire nodded eagerly. You two were married for almost 5 years. It's only right Elliot gets a portion of what was built together. And with the baby coming, she glanced down at her stomach like it held a legal claim. I tilted my head. And what exactly would be fair in your minds? Elliot looked at Claire. He let her do the talking. Claire smiled, rehearsed. Well, obviously splitting the Austin apartment 50-50. Maybe a lump sum settlement. Elliot mentioned your investment account? I didn't answer. I simply reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope. Thick, cream-colored, stamped. Claire blinked. What's that? I laid it gently on the table. My prenuptial agreement. Elliot's face changed instantly. Claire laughed, but it cracked at the edges. Lauren, that was years ago. Those things don't always hold. I nodded. True, some don't, but mine, ironclad. I pulled out one page and pointed. Complete separation of assets. No claim to properties, investments, or income acquired before or during the marriage. Signed, notarized, filed. Claire leaned in, eyes scanning the text. She looked for a crack in the wall. There wasn't one. And just in case either of you were thinking of challenging it, I added smoothly, I've already retained counsel, Janice Bloom. Elliot paled. The Janice Bloom from Frost? Walsh? The very one. Claire's fork slipped from her hand. Oh, I said, sipping my water, and one more thing before we go. I reached into my folder and slid a photo across the table. Claire, half drunk, half undressed, texting another man during her last accidental pregnancy scheme. I'd advise you not to try anything dramatic in court, I whispered. This time, Claire, I keep the receipts. And with that, I stood. Lunch was over, and the game had just shifted. The following week was eerily quiet. No calls, no emails, no angry texts. I almost thought they'd accepted defeat. But then, of course, came the voicemails. First from Elliot. Lauren, I think we should talk again. Maybe the prenup could be renegotiated? Renegotiated? The man who cheated on me with my sister wanted to negotiate? Then from Claire. Lauren, this isn't just about you and Elliot. There's a baby now. Don't punish an innocent child for our mistake. You have more than enough to help. There it was. The shift from smug to pleading. She was counting on my guilt, on my history of being the big sister, the responsible one, the provider. But this time, that role was retired. I didn't answer either of them. I forwarded the voicemails to Janice with the subject line, just in case. Then came the last card they had left, my mother. Evelyn showed up at my door unannounced, holding a pie like this was Thanksgiving. I know you're angry, she said as I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, but can't we talk just for 5 minutes? I didn't let her in. She sighed. Claire made a mistake. Elliot made a mistake. But don't throw away your family over a moment of weakness. I stared at her. A moment? You mean the 3 months they were sneaking around behind my back? Evelyn's mouth pressed into a line. She's your sister, and that child your niece or nephew will need family. I stepped outside, letting the door click shut behind me. Claire slept with my husband. That was her choice. She thought it would give her access to my life, my money, my future. That was calculated, not a mistake. But she's young, Evelyn insisted. She didn't think it through. That's the problem, I cut in. She did think it through. She thought I'd roll over like I always do. She thought being blood would buy her forgiveness. She bet everything on my silence. I took a breath. But this time, I'm not the one losing. I watched Evelyn's face fall, not because she disagreed, because she knew I was right. I let her leave with her pie and her pity. 2 days later, Janice called. Elliot's lawyer reached out. He's agreed to a full no-contest divorce. No claim on assets. No spousal support. Nothing. What about custody filings? I asked. No mention. I don't think he's even sure what kind of father he wants to be. I didn't say it out loud, but I knew. Claire was panicking. Her plan had backfired spectacularly. She'd lost the golden goose, and now she was stuck with the consequences. No money, no marriage. Just a baby and a boyfriend who suddenly realized he'd traded a penthouse for a spare bedroom at her mother's house. They wanted a shortcut to success. What they got was reality. 3 weeks after the divorce papers were signed, I walked into my new office on the top floor of a high-rise in downtown Austin. Same company, new title, Senior Strategy Partner, and a 35% salary increase. The irony? Elliot used to say I was too ambitious. Now that ambition was paying for a corner office with a skyline view while he was commuting 90 minutes from Evelyn's guest room. According to my cousin, who still followed Claire on Instagram, their new life wasn't exactly glamorous. Claire had posted a blurry selfie with the caption, "Starting fresh, all we need is love." Except love doesn't pay for diapers. And it definitely doesn't cover the $800 a month court-ordered child support Elliot was now legally obligated to provide. Janice had made sure of that. Meanwhile, I found a strange kind of peace. The kind that comes not from revenge but from clarity. I stopped explaining myself to people. Stopped attending family gatherings where forgiveness was expected, like an RSVP. I started saying no without guilt. I hired a private trainer. Switched therapists. Flew to Montreal for a 2-week strategy summit, where I was asked to keynote the closing panel. I told my story, not the personal one, but the professional one about rebuilding after corporate betrayal. But even as I rebuilt, the echoes of what happened still surfaced. Sometimes, I'd wake up and see Elliot's old mug in the cupboard, the one I forgot to throw out. Other times, I'd walk by a maternity store and wonder how far along Claire was. Then I'd remind myself, she's not my responsibility. Not anymore. I had carried that family for years. Paid rent for Claire. Covered Evelyn's medical bills. Bought Elliot a damn car when he said he needed a better image for clients. No one had ever asked what I needed. Until now. One evening, I returned home from work, dropped my bag on the marble kitchen counter, and opened the windows to let in the autumn air. The loft was quiet, too quiet, but this time it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. That night, I wrote something in my journal that I hadn't been able to put into words until then. I used to think protecting people was love. Now I know that protecting yourself is survival. And sometimes, survival is the greatest power of all. As I closed the journal, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. Claire. He's not the man I thought he was. Can we talk? I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I blocked the number. Not out of hate, but out of peace. Some bridges don't need burning. They collapse on their own. 6 months passed. Claire gave birth to a baby girl. I only knew because my mother sent a picture through my aunt, too afraid to message me directly. The baby was beautiful and innocent. She didn't choose any of this. But I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care, because I finally understood that caring doesn't require re-entering chaos. Elliot, according to my lawyer, was drowning in debt. He had taken out a payday loan to buy nursery furniture. His credit score had tanked. The dealership cut his hours after a scandal involving an attempted commission scam. Claire? She deleted most of her social media accounts. Gone were the filters, the curated couple photos, the inspirational captions. Reality had arrived, and it didn't come with a glam filter. Meanwhile, I moved forward. I sold the condo Elliot and I once shared and bought a restored brownstone in Clarksville. 3 bedrooms, high ceilings, and no shared memories. I adopted a German shepherd named Marlowe, who loved classical music and hated when I wore heels around the house. I started writing in the mornings again, something I hadn't done since college. Not for work. Just for me. And then, I met someone. Not in the fairy tale kind of way. Not in a whirlwind or at a rooftop bar. But on a Saturday at the local bookstore. He worked in nonprofit law, had a crooked smile, and asked me about a book on women's resilience. His name was Theo. He didn't know about Claire, or Elliot. And when I eventually told him, he didn't flinch. He just said, "That explains the steel in your eyes, but I also see softness. That's rare." We took it slow, no pressure, no masks. Just 2 people building something real, brick by quiet brick. On the anniversary of the dinner that changed my life, I poured a glass of wine, stepped out onto my terrace, and watched the Austin skyline glow. I didn't toast to revenge, or justice, or even freedom. I toasted to clarity. To the version of me who finally stopped begging others to treat her like she mattered and decided to do it herself. Because here's what they don't tell you. Sometimes, the people who betray you think they're ending your life. What they're really doing is setting you free. Claire thought taking Elliot would break me. But she didn't realize I wasn't the one who lost something. She was. And me? I won something far more valuable than money or marriage. I won myself.